He's checked, and I've decided to check back. Perhaps like, okay now, I've raised the flop here with there, and now I'm giving up. In reality, if I'd raised the flop with there and he called, I might even be firing a second barrel, trying to convince him, which is probably what I should have done. The river was a 2, and he's checked it again to me, and I think I've decided to shove all in there, a little bit over bet of the pot, sort of 12,000 to 11,000 pot, just trying to represent complete air, and he's got away from the hand. I'm not sure I played the hand particularly optimal. I think just calling the flop and perhaps re-evaluating it might be the best option. It also gives Jokin a chance, perhaps he wants to squeeze, and it gives Athanasius a little bit more rope to hang himself. Okay, now Athanasius has moved tables. We've got pocket queens, blinds 500, 1000, just over 30 bigs. Now the hijack has raised over to 2000. We're in the cutoff with queens. He's only got about 18 bigs. Look at the stacks behind. If there was sort of 20 to 40 big blind stacks behind, I might be tempted to just flat here. As it happens, there's 2 really big stacks there behind, which may well, if I flat decide to see a flop, I don't think they're going to be 3-bet folding a lot because of the opener's chip stack. I think 3-betting here is fine. I think it might even induce a 4-bet bluff from one of these guys and look a little bit weaker than just flatting. And I don't think it looks so strong on his part. I mean, nowadays I think it's actually quite a common thing to be 3-bet folding to a raise, even if the guy does have less than 20 big blinds. It does make your range very polarized to a strong hand or a complete bluff, whereas flatting is a little bit in between. I decided to 3-bet 5100. I think if I made it a little bit more, then perhaps it looks like I'm quitting myself. I tried to make it 2.5x, perhaps, to say, okay, I'm still might be folding if you shove here. It's complete airball. I don't think it's gonna be happening very often. I was fortunate that he did shove, and I ran into an inferior hand, and I held. Went up to 50,000. Opening ace jack from under the gun, 2.5x. That's fine. I think it's good to keep it consistently either 2x or 2.5. I think actually there's somewhere in between. Sorry, I've actually made it 2.25x. I didn't see that there. I think 2.25x is fine if you're going to be raising, and perhaps if you're out of position, making it 2.5 a little bit more is going to be optimal here. Raising up ace jack under the gun is totally fine. If I do get 3-bet from one of these stacks, I'm going to have to determine if I think the guy is capable of 3-bet folding. And what we see more and more nowadays is actually a raise from under the gun and under the gun +1, 3-betting. I guess if under the gun then looks at a hand like 10s or jacks, he's really going to be in a tough spot. Under the gun's raised, under the gun +1's 3-bet. My 10s, jacks are ever any good, perhaps even queens. So a lot of the time you're going to be seeing that, more so now in poker, particularly late in tournaments when the stack's a little bit shallower, and it's more effective stealing pre-flop because you're going to gain a higher equity from your chips. I raise ace jack under the gun. Going to continue the hand now. Dusty's called. Come down. He's got a fairly large stack. Come down queen 7 king. I think if I check back this flop, it's going to be quite polarized to a queen or perhaps a small pocket pair. I think the best way to play this hand is to bet the flop, put in quite a large bet, and I think if he calls one barrel, he might be folding the second barrel. I may make a Broadway or a pair on the turn anyway. So I've bet, he's folded out, and that's it. Next hand now is a very interesting one. It's what I talked about before the video. Some of the pre-flop spots went to 3-bet, went to 4-bet. So it's folded around to the cutoff here, who's already shown that he opens quite a lot in late position. As with deep stack, quite often the case is that the button does 3-bet, and try to make the most of the position. Often without much of a hand. You see this so much more now in 2011 than he did ever before, and it is a great way to making chips, because a lot of the time if he 3-bets here, mini here, it might just be check folding to most of the flops. He may also be 4-bet folding pre-flop if Dusty then comes over the top. Dusty did go ahead and 3-bet. I think from his sizing here, you can tell that he's a regular player and that he's playing position well. I think if the guy makes it 2-7-1-5 and Dusty just 3x's it, it's much more of an amateur play and signifies probably much more strength, because amateurs are much less likely to be showing up with air here. So there's 11,000 in the pot. I think my stack is, if I had 30k, I'm going to be jamming here most of the time. My stack is actually a little bit more awkward to play. Not as awkward as say 80k, because then it really does give one of these two players a little bit more room to maneuver with air. He folds and I make it 12-8, and you've got to look at the maths here. I mean, when you decide to 3-bet or 4-bet without a hand, you really do have to look at the maths and think, okay, there's 11k in the pot, I'm going to make it 12-8 here, which I think it looks really strong. The reason I like 4-betting here with ace-10, and in fact it is a complete bluff, because if one of them decide to shove me, I'm folding. The ace blocker is a great hand to have, because it makes it much less likely that they do have an ace in their hand, rather than 4-betting with something like deuces here. I think you really have to be careful. Sometimes players decide to steal, and the pot's 5,000, and they decide to to put in a 4-bet to like 11,000 or something, and decide to fold. I think that's really got to work such a high percentage of the time, whereas when I'm putting in 12-8 to win 11,000, it's got to work around about 45-50% of the time, and I think it does. Dusty perhaps can even flat on the button here and check fold to a lot of flops. I'm confident in my post-flop ability, and I'm confident that I've really repped quite a big monster here. Perhaps against a little bit more capable regs like Thaddeus, who I know can, if they didn't believe me for a second, they would shove in the nut low against me. Against these two players, I think I can represent pretty strong holding, and I probably was there taking down the pot with the best hand. Okay, the blind's now 8 and 1600. I think we must be approaching the bubble, and I did have a fair bit of history now at the table with a lot of these players. I haven't actually shown down too many hands, and when I have shown down, it generally has been a premium. It's folded round to me on the button. I think a lot of the time here I'm probably going to be folding the button, just because it's near the bubble and the two stacks there have actually just about got me covered, particularly what the big blind has. So I think they're going to be putting a lot of pressure on me. It does also actually enable another dynamic. I think if I had I have enough chips now to be able to put a bit more pressure on them with an air hand. I'll raise the button. I think Zwerbs calls, and if he ever has a premium hand here, he's always going to be re-raising. I think he has a hand that plays well post flop, 10-8 suited or a pocket pair. That he has the implied odds now that we're quite deep to be able to take me on. Obviously, there's now 10,000 in the pot. I think it's a great chance for M Silence to come over the top now and make a raise to try and take this pot down on the bubble. That's exactly what he's done. He's made it 13-2. It's a pretty big raise. I think if he did have a premium, he might have made it a little bit less to give us a bit more room. But it's such an obvious 3-bet spot for him that it's such an obvious 4-bet spot for me. I mean, it's perfect, because if he doesn't have a premium hand here, I really can't see him coming back over the top. I think Zwerbs is almost always folding, and I can really go ahead and rep a monster here. So the pot's 22,000. I've re-raised to 23.5. It does look like I'm committing myself. I've put in more than a third of my chip stack here. but I like it because I put in 22,000 to win 22,000. I think the rate of return on what you've put in